Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another edition of Stirring It Out with Tira Monique, Kitchen Table Talk. And on this edition of Political News, we're going to listen to a couple of ladies and see what they have to say about Mr. Trump and his exit from the White House. Let's listen and talk about it on the other side.
538 members of the Electoral College met in all 50 states today, some in person, some virtually, to cast their ballots for president based on what voters decided in November, making Joe Biden's presidential win official, at least for those living on planet Earth. But then there are these guys.
The only date in the Constitution is January 20th. So we have more than enough time to right the wrong of this fraudulent election result and certify Donald Trump as the winner of the election.
Trump aide Stephen Miller was still promising, as of this morning, to challenge the Electoral College results with Congress. Of course, given at least half of Congress is controlled by the Democrats, I think we can safely say that effort has a snowball's chance, and you know what? That certainly hasn't stopped the president's diehard supporters, who've increasingly taken to the streets in recent days to hold so-called Stop the Steal marches. Among those taking part have been members of the white supremacist group, the Proud Boys, and in some areas, the marches have ended in violent clashes with counter-protesters, including D.C., where 4 people were stabbed, and in Olympia, Washington, where 1 person was shot over the weekend. As for Trump himself, he's spreading the blame far and wide among those who refuse to help him subvert democracy, including the Supreme Court, the, quote, rhinos, Republicans in name only, that run the state voting apparatus, and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, who's a longtime Trump supporter. So if the president isn't facing reality now, will he ever? Joined by 2 people who know him pretty well. His niece, Mary Trump, and Barbara Rez, who's a former vice president in charge of construction at the Trump Organization, better known to some as the woman who built Trump Tower. Barbara's also the author of Tower of Lies, what my 18 years of working with Donald Trump reveals about him. And Mary wrote, of course, the recently released bestseller, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. She has a follow-up planned in the summer called The Reckoning. Mary, good to see you again. And Barbara, thanks so much for joining us. Good to meet you.
You too.
Hi, Jim.
Mary, starting with you. So it is formally over. The electors will have spoken by the time we all go to sleep. You two know him as well as anybody does. What's your sense of how Donald Trump's going to react to this news?
Horribly, which should be worrying for all of us. I think we've seen how he's reacted to people he believes owe him, particularly the 3 justices on the Supreme Court, and the most sycophantic of his sycophants, Brian Kemp. But the problem for us now is that this is really the end of the road. Doesn't mean he's not going to keep trying, but there really aren't any other avenues to pursue, which means that he's going to become increasingly desperate. He's going to continue to sow division because if he feels like he's going down, he's literally going to try to take all of us down with him. I mean, let's face it, he's committing sedition every single day. I can only imagine what's going on behind the scenes in terms of what he's going to smash on his way out the door.
We'll play that imagination a little bit. What would desperation yield, in your estimation, in the 30-plus remaining days he's got power, Mary?
Well, I think it's going to take a couple of forms. One, again, the things we're not going to see ever, or at least not right away. This is a desperate man who's in serious financial straits and huge amounts of debt, who has access to this nation's most closely guarded secrets. So what's for sale right now? Beyond that, though, what we can see and what we have seen for since November 7th, I guess, is his willingness to delegitimize the Biden administration before it even begins, to undermine the American people's faith in democracy and in our elections. And it's increasingly dangerous.
So I just want to be clear, Mayor, one last thing. Are you suggesting you think he might go so far as to sell secrets to foreign governments to deal with his financial problems?
What I'm saying, because obviously I don't have any access to that kind of information, what
Sure.
I'm saying, though, is that we need to understand that he will stop at nothing if it, 1, benefits him, or 2, settles a score.
Barbara, do you disagree with any of that? You worked with him for 18 years. Do you disagree with anything Mary said?
No, not a single word. Absolutely.
When Donald Trump was a younger man and you worked for him as a lead executive in his company, when he was trapped, and he is about to be trapped tonight, again, by the time we go to sleep, the electors have spoken, what was his usual response? What kind of response, Barbara?
Well, he got angry, of course, and threw things, and yelled at people and everything like that. He could get angry and sing, but ultimately he had to spin it. Had to figure out how to make it work so that he looked okay, that he didn't look bad, he didn't look like a loser, and he was able to do that with almost everything that happened to him.
Well, that he controlled. Speaking of loser, I want to play for you a couple of excerpts from Donald Trump over just the last couple of weeks about these election results. Here's Donald Trump.
We won. This wasn't like a close election. We won it big.
So many of the states, I won every one of them. Every one of these states, I won them all by a lot.
I spoke to you 2 days after it was official, Mary, and I asked you the same question I'm going to ask you a month later. Does he really believe this, or he just can't accept that he didn't win? What's the answer in mid-December?
It's a weird answer. I think it's partially both. Initially, Donald always knows when he's lying. It's pretty easy to tell when he's lying, but because the stakes are so great, not just in terms of what may or may not happen when he no longer has the power of the Oval Office to protect him, but in terms of his own psychopathologies. Losing is literally the worst thing that he could have done, and he's completely trapped by this loss, which is a unique experience for him. So I think over time, when the stakes are high enough, he actually convinces himself that his lies are true. And that is what gives some of what he says this air of conviction, which is a part of the reason why so many people believe him. It's pretty terrifying.
Barbara, I'm always wondering about how much his public self and his private self are the same or different. When he would, and you talk about the lies, obviously it's in your title too, long before the Washington Post got in the business of counting them. When you were with him privately, would he acknowledge that he was, I'll be polite, that he was spinning the facts in public? Or was this a 24/7 kind of phenomenon with Donald Trump?
It depended on whether or not my belief worked for him. If he wanted me to believe, if that could work to his benefit. To a quick story, we had a beam, a piece of it was a titanium beam, fell off Trump Tower, and I didn't know that. Did I know using it? Actually, we made a twice to pick up a fireplace for it, and so it landed on a truck in 57th Street. It was okay. No one was hurt. So Trump called me up to his office. I didn't know anything about it. I heard the story. He had in there the superintendent, and the project manager that I worked with from the construction company. And as much as I wouldn't believe anything Donald said, I trusted every single word they said, every single word. So they, three of them told me, or they told Donald, under his direction, that this couldn't have been from our building, it never was on our building. And then I was directed to go out and present this to the press, and I did. And the reason why it was handled that way was Trump knew that I would not lie. I would not go out there if I knew. So we set up that whole thing to make me innocent, not know, and then I could go and tell his lie for him. So it depends on whether or not it's important for me to believe the lie or to be part of the putting it together.
It's amazing you lasted almost 2 decades. It's very hard to single out, Mary, that which is most troubling about your uncle. And what I have singled out is what I consider to be deadly behavior, is his lack of empathy for the hundreds of thousands of people who have died. I mean, I've called on the show practically homicidal behavior. I don't understand why he didn't even try to control this virus, even if the only reason he wanted to control it was for self-preservation, even if he didn't give a damn about the hundreds of thousands of people who would die on his watch. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I can try. And first of all, I agree with you. And we need to, I think language is so important here. This is at best criminally negligent homicide and at worst mass murder. And I'm leaning towards mass murder because he's continuing to do nothing, even though we have at our disposal means to stop this. But anyway, initially it was because he could not be associated with weakness. And in this case, that would be a disease. Also, because of my grandfather's bizarre adherence to Norman Vincent Peale's power of positive thinking, Donald also can't be associated with any negativity. Now, as it became clearer and clearer that this virus was indeed happening and that we needed to pull out all of the stops, he would have had to course correct. And what's course correcting? If you're mature, it's taking into account mistakes that may have been made and adjusting accordingly. For him, course correcting means admitting you've done something wrong. That's never going to happen with him. And then, because he was able to politicize, unbelievably enough, mask wearing, which would have saved hundreds of thousands of Americans, he made the calculation that continuing to double down on claiming that the virus wasn't that big a deal or was a hoax was to his political benefit. That's why.
So I want to stay with you, psychologist, just for a second, Mary Trump. Loyalty, and he didn't show it to his constituents, is a one-way street. On election day, 93% of the counties with the highest infection rates in the United States of America voted for Donald Trump. Why?
First of all, I think what's been revealed is this pretty depressing fact that a lot of people in this country have authoritarian personalities. They're weak people who feel the need to attach their allegiance to what they view to be a strong leader, which is weird because Donald's such an incredibly weak person, but he does have a lot of power. Secondly, Donald has taken the politics of grievance to a level I've never seen before, and he taps into that sense of grievance that many people in this country suffer from because of demographic changes or economic uncertainty.
You know, Barbara, I read that you said in an interview recently in the last handful of days, you thought it was not impossible that Donald Trump, post-January 20th, could leave the country. Why did you say that?
Well, I thought in terms of if there was a chance, a reasonable chance, that he could go to jail, I don't think he would. I don't think he'd stay in the country. He wouldn't chance that. You know, it's so he can do whatever he wants to do. Whatever he does now, he does in his desk in Mar-a-Lago or in Washington. He can put that desk anywhere in the world and do the same thing that he's doing. So I think he would do that. Yes.
Can you imagine that? Mary, can you imagine that happening, or does he believe that any potential prosecution, assuming he either doesn't get a pardon from an acting President Pence or doesn't try to pardon himself, does he not believe he could buy his way, litigate his way out of any New York State prosecution?
Yeah, it's a really good question because this election, this decisive loss, is the first time in his life he hasn't been able to get his way out of a loss, right? So he has no experience with not being able to buy, cheat, or lie or steal his way out of something. He has always in the past been able to brazen himself out of any potential charges, etc. However, this is a different situation. There are serious consequences beyond just, having to be declared bankrupt. And the other variable, though, is who's going to be able to convince him of the seriousness of what he potentially is facing. And I don't really know that there is anybody. I mean, I think Barbara's onto something, that he would leave the country if he could embrace the reality of what the consequences he may be facing. I'm just not entirely sure he's going to be able to embrace that reality.
I agree.
Barbara,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Barbara. Say that again.
I just think the stakes are too high.
Mm-hmm.
And he may listen to some people.
Mary, what do we learn about our country in the 4 years of Donald Trump as its president?
Nothing good. I think one of the most important things we've learned is that one of our two major political parties is anti-democratic, anti-American, and pro-autocracy. and they will do absolutely anything because of the demographic changes that party is facing to cling to power no matter what they need to break in the process. And, my view is that Donald hasn't transformed the Republican Party. He's revealed it to be what it has been for a very long time. He has just been unable to push the envelope beyond what somebody like Mitch McConnell could have dared hope.
I have very few seconds left, but Barbara, you write about his racism, his anti-Semitism, his misogyny. Why were you the exception to the misogyny rule?
I wish I had time, because he thought I was a killer. He likes strong women. He believes that he's better than all women, so they don't present a challenge to him. And so he does surround himself with very strong women, powerful women. Preferably.
And you were at the top of the list, needless to say.
I guess I was at the time.
And Mary, I've read the title of the book coming out in July is The Reckoning. Whose reckoning are we talking about?
Hopefully, the people who have put us in the horrific situation we're in, who have perpetuated the incredibly complicated crises we're currently facing. But, that's a lot of people. So it's sort of America's reckoning as well.
Barbara, it's good to meet you. Congratulations on your work. And Mary Trump, it's great to see you again. Same to you.
Thank you so much.
All right, my friends, that was a lot. What do you think? Do you think there's any possibility that Mr. Trump might leave the country? Let's discuss it below. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you thought about becoming a friend, do that by subscribing. Until next time, guys, be good, be your best, and God bless America. Bye.